And it went like...
What we're now seeing is a critical mass of talent, infrastructure, support mechanisms, community, and that's all driving the continued growth of the industry going forward. And that's really what you need. You know, we have a mix of both world-class, large AAA publisher developers, and we have amazing, creative, upstart indie studios in Canada. And that mixed ecosystem between them is really what I think has been, you know, the success for Canada's industry.
Couldn't agree more. Dan, Scott, or Vincent? Dan.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think Jason nailed it, right? I'll just reiterate some of the things. Certainly, the incentives have been really powerful in helping to establish that baseline. And, you know, as people grew up in studios, they went off and started founding their own studios and things like that. And I think the other thing I would highlight is just the level of talent that exists in Canada. You know, we're a country, I think, that puts a good priority on education. There's a really fantastic talent base here. Those two things, I don't think one really exists without the other, right? We've got those great incentives, but we've also got a world-class talent base that I think, you know, we've known about for a long time, and I think we're really seeing more and more now. The rest of the world is just seeing, because great incentives wouldn't mean anything without great talent. And I think, you know, we're fortunate as a country that we've got both.
Scott, anything to add to this?
Yeah, well, I think in a bit we might talk about the specific tax incentives or the lack thereof in some areas of the country. But I would add to the ecosystem and the spin-off effect of having the very large organizations. I mean, we'll always have the entrepreneurial spirit that will create independent studios, but certainly I've benefited from the fact that in Edmonton, BioWare has had a presence here for over 25 years. And there's a number of studios that exist in Alberta that have had people that have gone through BioWare, kind of learned some senior level skills, and then have gone off and created other studios. And certainly at Inflection Games, we benefit from that. Again, the 4 people that walked through the door on day one, we all came from BioWare and Electronic Arts.
Vincent?
Yeah, obviously the tax credit that's been that existed in Quebec for over 20 years now has definitely served us incredibly well. It created an immense amount of growth and training within the province. So that definitely is a huge boon for all of the studios that have appeared over the last several decades. But the other thing too, I think that's great for Canada, why it's so well positioned, is that we're right next to the U.S., which is obviously a huge country for businesses. There's a lot of games coming out of there. At Behavior, we are working with them closely on a lot of our projects. So, being in the same time zone, just sharing that kind of similarity with them, just having them as a neighbor is definitely a big plus.
So I'm going to loop back to Scott, because the next question is, okay, we're doing well, we're growing, we do have some challenges, so what are they? So Scott, up to you.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. So in Alberta, we don't have a tax incentive. We had one, and it was eliminated in a budget in the fall of 2019. And it really is telling the impact that those types of incentives have on the industry. And I'm a finance and accounting guy, so I sort of get it. For those that are particularly students in the audience, I actually give a talk at the University of Alberta into their comp sci game design program, and it's actually the finance of the video game industry, and where we talk about this sort of stuff. And the end of the day, imagine somebody making $100,000 a year, and in BC, through the tax incentives, that's actually worth about $17,500 back to the company. In Montreal, that's worth $37,500 back to the company. In Edmonton, zero. So it's a very challenging environment. And for us as a studio, while I've said that we've grown to over 100 people, we only have about 80 people now working in Edmonton, and the rest of the folks, as kind of reality has set hold, we're expanding, and we actually have a cluster of folks now working in Vancouver. We're benefiting from the program out there. We're able to attract senior level talent, and we have a cluster of folks working in Montreal with us. Again, attracting some very senior level talent that we're comfortable in having work remote for us. And we're benefiting from the programs there. I would love to have that in Alberta, but it's a very difficult and challenging environment for us. We do have through Digital Alberta a number of extraordinarily good conversations with the government. We've managed to get them away from some of the rationale that they used to make their decision back in October 2019, but we still have work to do, and we have support from various members of the industry, Electronic Arts, Beamdog out here, New World Interactive, obviously us at Inflection. Unity has a new studio down in Calgary that they're trying to expand. So, we're having the right conversations, but it's difficult work for sure.
Yeah, I concur. Tax credits are so important nowadays to help homegrown companies invest more and hire more people, but also to attract foreign investment. And in fact, other jurisdictions around the world have recognized how important the video game industry is to stimulate their economy and create the techno-creative jobs that we need for the future. So couldn't agree more. It's very important for us, for Canada, to remain competitive in terms of its incentives. The other thing we have in Canada is the Canada Media Fund, and in provinces we have programs such as the IDM Fund from Ontario Creates. But anyone else wants to chime in terms of incentives before we move to labor? Any other comment?
Well, another thing that we've seen in Montreal over the last few years, and I think this is a direct result of the tax credits directed at video games, is the arrival of Google, Microsoft. They're very keen on AI development, and that's one of the sectors that's seeing an enormous amount of growth. Obviously, it's not related to games directly, but it just shows that investing well in video games over the years has spawned kind of a growing industry in parallel sectors that are also becoming incredibly important in Montreal, and it's because of that talent pool and that technical know-how that the population has right now.
In fact, that's a great segue to labor, because there's so much talent in Canada and so many companies wanting that talent. So is there a labor shortage in our industry? Anyone? Yeah. Dan.
Yes, I think this is the simple answer, right? I mean, I think I look at this from two perspectives. There's certainly a crunch now, and it's only going to get worse. And I would say not just our industry. I think that crunch goes across tech industry all the way up, right? I mean, I spent over a decade at Microsoft, and we spent obviously a lot of time looking at future of work, technology jobs, and things like that. And all of these are the ones like, Vincent mentioned and others, these large companies recognize there is a future tech crunch challenge coming. And, also, as we talked about before, jobs in games prepare you for a lot of parallel jobs. And in fact, a lot of these jobs that these big companies are looking at, like AI, VR, metaverse, all of these things, the tools, talents, and techniques you pick up in game development are extraordinarily transferable to a number of these other industries. So I think that is making our challenge down the line. It's going to be even more challenging because right now, or up until now, we've really only been competing with each other for talent, and even that has been kind of brutal and hard to stay ahead of. But we're seeing that landscape changing, where we're not just competing against other games companies for talent. We've got just general tech companies seeing the transferability of the skills and the high caliber of talent that it takes to be competitive in this industry. So they're coming for our people as well.
And do you guys think that work from home is amplifying that challenge? Vincent? Or Scott? Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we've certainly experienced that. I mean, there's some companies that have some deep pockets that have reached out to folks within our studio and have offered them the opportunity to work remotely, basically making a salary that we couldn't compete with. Tax credit or no tax credit is just somewhat irrelevant. So I think it's created some challenges within the industry. And for those that do want to continue to work remote, great. We find that for us, one of the things that we offer is actually the opportunity for people to come together. Anybody who has, as Jason has said, put a dent in his sofa for the last 2 years on Zoom calls, having an opportunity to come and work together, not just meet together in forums like this, but actually come together and collaborate. That's when we do our best work. It's coming together in person. And so we kind of see a hybrid future. But yes, certainly the power of remote work, and for people that really want to embrace that, then it has created some additional challenges for us in the industry.
Vincent, any more thoughts?
Yeah, well, one of the big things that we saw over the last 2 years of behavior is that there's a lot of people that don't necessarily want to work from a big city. Montreal obviously is the major one, but there's people that work outside in smaller towns now. They can work 3 hours away from Montreal, back in their hometown. So that actually opened up our hiring opportunities to the entire province, basically, and even outside Quebec to some degree. We've had some hires in Ontario, and so I think that's one thing that outside of a remote environment wouldn't have been possible. Really, if you asked me that 3 years ago, I wouldn't have said that was possible. Everybody had to move to Montreal if they wanted to work with us, but now we've really widened our reach within the province. And I also think that working remote, just with our partners, has kind of torn down those walls that kind of exist between the different studios. Now we're, on a daily basis, we can talk with our partners almost as though we're talking to our own staff, right? Everybody's kind of sharing the same environment, just virtual meeting spaces that we have. So it brought us a lot closer even to our partners.
So are you all going to implement hybrid work mode?
Yes, we are.
Scott,
Absolutely.
Dan, all of you. So this is a change that is there to remain post-COVID, obviously. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle.
No.
I think any studio that is not exploring or actively implementing hybrid is just kind of severely behind right now.
So how do you make sure that the creative juice and the spontaneity of creation happens in an hybrid mode?
If I could step in on that one, what we've actually done is we've looked at the way that work is done within our studio. So the 3 days that we are in the studio, or at least that's our plan, we'll be rolling that out later this spring. It's really taking a look at scheduling activities that focus on collaboration and the things that people are going to want to be in person for and discuss. Bringing everybody into the office just to have them sit at their desk is kind of a waste of time. So what things are we doing as part of the creative process where it benefits from having folks break off into rooms, be beside their peers, have those discussions? And then the other 2 days of the week are really, we know that people crave focus time, and they need some definitive structure where they just get to tune out, get their work done. And so we offer that opportunity then for them to do that remotely. You can do it from home, but if you find yourself that you're one of these folks that does their best work when they're actually still in a physical office environment, great, come into the studio, we'll make it available to you.
What about behavior? How are you organizing work to optimize creativity, and how do you make it work?
Well, I think I'll echo a lot of what Scott said. It's very close. I think this is mostly on a project-per-project basis because we have probably over 20 projects rolling at once. So depending on the team structure, the producers on that project, they'll try at least to implement days of the week where they encourage their staff to come in the office, where there can be these creative exchanges that happen, and just for team building, right? Just being able to see the people in person that you work with on a daily basis is just good. It's just healthy. But one thing that worried, I think, every company when everybody went remote was, will people be productive when they're remote? And I think everybody can now say that, yes, you can be entirely productive. Obviously, you need to have the right management structure to encourage people to remain productive. But I think, at least at Behavior, we've really solved that. I think all of our senior executives have been reassured over the years that we are entirely productive working from home. So it's okay to let people have a great work-life balance, go back home, and do a couple of focus days really where they can work at home.
What about certain affinity, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, we've effectively given our staff the choice, right? I mean, I think you need to be flexible to what your employees need and how they're going to do the best work, right? COVID changed things for a lot of people. We've got employees like other companies that moved to, be closer to their families, or in some cases, move out of high-cost living areas, so for them and their families and things like that. So I think people really re-examined what's important to them through this, and we want to support people in that. So we have people who desperately want to be in the office 5 days a week as soon as we're fully open, right? And that's to Vincent's point, that's how they do their best work. We've got people who will be fully remote, and we've got people who will be hybrid, and that for us is anywhere from 1 to 5 days a week, right? That they're going to come in. That's going to be entirely up to them, and where everyone I think is still figuring out the best way to make it work. But you've got to give employees that flexibility. I mean, I know someone, I will obviously not name names or companies, that they've been physically forced back into the office, and this person commutes 45 minutes each way to spend their day on Zoom calls all day. That's not landing super well, right, for this person or their colleagues or anything like that. So I think it's really important to give staff that flexibility.
So Jason, the study you released a few months ago, I think, confirms what they're saying. Any comments on this?
In the economic study that we released in November, most of the studios that responded said that they would be going to a hybrid model. Some are going to be doing work from anywhere. Some are going to a 4-day work week. But it's, predominantly the plan is that there will be some sort of a hybrid model. In a lot of cases, it means 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. But, of course, that's going to be up to every company to decide, on their own. I think what's important is that, whatever each company decides to do, it's like a new world out there. It used to just be that work was 5 days a week, and there was no differentiation whether you worked for certain affinity, inflection, or behavior, or anyone else. It was you go to the studio Monday to Friday, and maybe additional, with respect to finishing a game or whatnot. Now, work environment, lifestyle decisions, they become a competitive differentiation. That matters, right? Where are you going to work? Well, this company wants me in the office 5 days a week. Well, this company, they have a 4-day work week. Well, this company is only asking me to come in twice a week. Well, that company says I can work from anywhere. How does that jive with my own personal value system, my own lifestyle priorities? And I think that, like I said, it used to be it was just a default, right? I mean, the only differentiator might be pay, might be, who's got the best kitchen, who's got the best coffee. Now it's about who's got the best work-life balance, or who's got the best situation that meets my individual needs. And I think that's going to change the game going forward.
So I'm going to stay with you, Jason, because we've talked about labor shortage, and I know you have some opinions about how can we tackle our challenge of the labor shortage in Canada.
Well, we have to look at the raw materials, right? We do a very, with due respect to every student in the room, a very unfocused job of producing digital talent, IT talent, tech talent in Canada. We don't learn it. We don't learn it in K to 12, right? You don't learn, unless you want to sign up for a specific kind of extra credit program. For most of us, we learn how to use Microsoft Office. You learn how to send an email. You learn how to use Word. Maybe you can do some basic formulas and Access. But beyond that, you're really not learning coding. And so when you get into grade 10, you have a choice. You have to take a physics or chemistry or biology, and you got to take one of those every year till you're in grade 12. So if you know in grade 10 you want to be a chemist, you can take chemistry grade 10, 11, 12, and then by the time you get into university, you got 3 years of chemistry. You kind of know basic chemistry, right? We don't have that with computer science. You talk to any dean of any computer science program, they're going to tell you, I got 2 streams of people that come into my program. The first are kids that are really interested in video games who taught themselves how to code and make games in their basement or in their room. Basement is such a stereotype that The other is, my kid is really good at math and he doesn't know what he wants to do, but I told him he can make a lot of money if he gets into computer science. That's it. Those are the 2 streams, for the most part, right? I mean, yes, it's a generalization, but we do not have that 3-year, I've done CS programming in high school, I know I want to get into computer science and code. We don't have that. But we need to get back deeper than that to get people interested. If we want to start talking about the diversity question, if we're going to get into that later. But, we as a country need some sort of national digital skills program and initiative and strategy that is going to allow us to create the raw materials, which is all of you, the resources, that's going to power the tech industry and the video game industry forward. So it's complex, but that's kind of like the easy way of explaining it.
So, Vincent, any additional insights on how do we tackle the labor shortage challenge?
Well, I think Jason kind of nailed it, right? I think having better training, having more people involved in these courses through college, through university is definitely a big plus. I mean, we're constantly looking at, getting more interns in the studio. We've, as you know, we've seen a lot of growth over the last few years, so we need that talent. But it's also a matter of getting, veterans, the people that have worked in the industry for several years already. I mean, we also need to have that, we want to keep that balance in our teams as they're growing. So obviously the incentives have to be good. The pay has to be just right. The work-life balance, as Jason mentioned, is super critical now, and we know more than ever. So there's a lot of we try to lure people with the with activities, with different programs that we have. but also with our values. We try to put those forward as much as possible so that they understand that they're not just a cog in the wheel, that they have a lot of impact on the projects that we make. I think that's also really important for the people that we hire. We also like to get people to help us, the staff that we have to help us by referencing people that they know, that they might have worked with. Obviously, networking is super important for us to get people, fresh blood that has been vetted by other people in the company. But it's not just a matter of hiring the right people, it's also a matter of keeping the people that we've hired. The space is incredibly volatile. People, like to shop around for work, as funny as that sounds. They'll go one place, they'll try for a few years, and they're curious, they want to explore another studio. I mean, in Montreal in particular, there's so much offer right now in terms of work that anybody who's remotely skilled and if they know that, then they'll be tempted to shop around. So that's something that we try to keep people as much as we can, and we're thankful as well to see that a lot of people do come back to our studio, which is pretty interesting. They shop around and then they come back to our studio, which is great.
Dan, what about you?
I'll reiterate a little bit. Things have been said. I think there's certainly the pipeline issue, and honestly, that's education in general, right? The educational system in general has not really evolved much since the Industrial Revolution. It's still putting out a very specific type of student, and it's a real crisis. To the point that, again, all these companies, these large companies we talked about earlier, are launching their own digital skills programs for students from elementary all the way through up, because the classical education system is not evolving, is not keeping pace. And I think these companies have realized that they're going to have to solve this problem themselves. I mean, these companies are giving out their own credentials, right, and creating their own pipelines as a result of it. So it is. I could spend hours, as you know, Lucy, talking just about this. It's something I feel very strongly about. But I mean, I think the other thing, in addition to creating the talent, it's to also touch on what Vincent was saying. It's that senior talent, and how do you attract that talent from other countries in as well, right? I mean, there's two. I think it's a twofold solution. I think first and foremost, we absolutely need to do a better job as a country, as a society, frankly, generating tech-ready individuals. But I think we also need to look at how we attract people from other countries as well.
Scott?
Yeah, I was going to say we have it relatively easy in Edmonton because we just focus on the great weather that we have here, and people just flock to the city. Yeah, but the point about access to senior level talent, though, is actually the crux of I think a lot of the issues. We have good pipelines, and again, we'll talk about diversity here, I think, before we close the panel, but we have good pipelines coming out of the post-secondary institutions. More can be done, obviously, and that's a provincial funding thing where we're relying upon them to create the seats so that students can actually get into those programs. But what we find, certainly within Alberta, is that, there's only so many people that you can pluck away from BioWare where they've worked for 10 or 15 years. And then so trying to attract those folks to come into our studio so that they have the skills and the capabilities to be able to support the junior level folks that we are going to bring in from folks secondaries. That's kind of our challenge as a management and leadership team.
So I have to say, go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump in and make a statement. I mean, I think these guys are all right. We have a short-term solution, which is immigration. Yeah. When a long-term solution is what I was talking about and what Dan's talking about, which, is going to take a long time. Let's be honest, right, Dan? Like, this is generational change. He's talking about industrial revolution. We're maybe in another one. So, I mean, things probably need to be updated a little bit, right? But immigration's super important to us. And if you think about what we've been able to do in Canada, we have a high-tech, fast express immigration program now that's been, it's being copied by Australia as part of their digital strategy. So we're doing okay when it comes to that with respect to senior talent. But yesterday I saw something, and this might be interesting. The Polish government is now offering any professional with IT experience from the Ukraine, like immediate residency and visa, like today. It wasn't grain farmers from Ukraine. It was specifically IT professionals. That goes to show you it's not just us. I mean, this is Poland. I mean, they've got a decent IT sector, but it's not Canada, United States. Like, if Poland is doing this, like, where are we, right? Like, we need to be doing things like this because we're in a global competition for talent. And the pandemic has exacerbated that. Everything's going digital. So, anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Like, immigration, but are we doing enough, right? Like,
yeah, good question. Are we doing enough? So, Vincent, any opinion on that? Are we doing enough?
I think we can always do better. That's for sure. I think we covered this topic quite a bit, but definitely the education system is something that we can improve. I think companies can also improve their ways of attracting talent. The government can do better as well to attract external talent. And also to piggyback off of, trying to bring technical training to a much earlier age, I think it got me thinking about technology on a social level as well. We're talking a lot about Meta and the future of tech. And I think that's also another field of study that could be interesting for kids. It's not just about coding. It's also about the concept of where we're headed in the technological age that a lot of major company CEOs say we're getting into. I'm curious to see, what our kids could, think of if they were properly trained in that regard.
And many of our jobs are techno-creative, so there's a lot of artistic and creative power in our jobs. I see you, Dan, nodding. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Jason said something super important that I just want to highlight about this being a global challenge. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the pandemic and how the world has changed. So we have a bunch of great technical talent in the country and things, but as everyone here has talked about and Jason just highlighted, it works in reverse too. It's not like our people have to move to Poland or to any of these other countries to get these great jobs, because now they can stay in their well-indented couch and continue to work remotely from wherever they are for any company on the planet. I feel like these other companies have woken up to this faster than we have. We have certainly seen that, and I know, everyone I know in the industry is saying the same thing, where, yep, we had someone and now they're working for a company in Europe or Asia or something like that. So I think, part of this tech crunch we talk about is also about protecting the talent that we already have, because it does us no good to create these reams of, this very highly technical workforce if other countries are just going to come in and say, oh yeah, cool, yeah, stay in Ontario, but now you're working for us in choose your other country. So I think that's a big part of the challenge we have to get our heads around as well.
All right, I'm going to go ahead, Scott. You were going to
I was just going to chime in very quickly on something relative to immigration. To the point that we can always do better, the federal government actually does need to do better. We have a number of people within our studio that are working their way through the immigration process, and highly talented. They fit into the right boxes, and unfortunately the federal government seems to play a bit of whack-a-mole based on certain things that are happening on their files. So suddenly it's like, well, you know what, we're not going to actually do an intake, and we have people that are kind of stranded and wondering what's going on. So the federal government, immigration is the way to continue to grow our workforce, certainly within the games industry. And we need this to be super streamlined. They need to be able to back up the statements that they're making with actual commitment of resources, and actually to ensure that people flow through this process extraordinarily quickly for us, because it's frustrating for us as an organization, and it's even more frustrating for some of our employees who are just left in limbo for months upon months, wondering what's happening with their file.
So thanks for raising this, because it's a major challenge, but we can tackle it. I realize there's only 7 minutes left, and we have more questions. But I want to ask you, the audience, do you have any burning question? There's a mic, I think, over there. Yes? No? No, Mike? Any burning questions? Okay. All right, so I'm going to do a shameless plug for Ontario. So, Ontario announced a scholarship for students studying in video game and esports. That's groundbreaking. No other provinces has that. And Ontario also announced that STEM education is going to start very early at the primary school level. So we're implementing what's been discussed here, and more is coming from all of the other provinces, but I'm very proud to say that we've done that in Ontario. So circling back to talent, diversity. So how do we attract a more diverse labor force? And I think we've covered it indirectly, but Jason, any additional thought?
It's a loaded question in the sense that it is extremely important. I mean, our studies show that, we're about 20% women in tech in our industry. Sorry, women in the video game industry, but most of them are in things like PR, communications, admin. Only a small percentage of them, about 5, 6, 7%, are actually making games, like hands-on technology positions. So we need to do a better job, but it's not simply as easy as going out and saying we're going to target more women, or we're going to target more people who are visible minorities, that we want to become more diverse. We would be hiring people if they wanted to work in our industry and if they had the skills to work in our industry. So there's got to be a disconnect there. And I think what really needs to happen is what we've talked about and what I've already mentioned is, like, we need to hit young girls and pretty much every kid in the school system with computational thinking programs, whether it's just thinking about how if Jason is over here and he needs to get over here, what are the 5 steps that it takes to get him over there? Like, I have two young kids, and I'm working with my daughter every night on math, and it's ingrained in kids. Well, that's great, but why aren't we ingraining, every job in the future is going to require these types of computational thinking skills, and we're not teaching anybody. So I think we could do a huge blanket approach by just getting to kids super early, making them think technology is cool, and giving them the opportunity to learn the skills early in life. It carries on with them.
And you're right. We want to hire the talent. But we need to prepare the talent. But there's no doubt there's so much opportunities in our industry. So before we wrap up, there's something that we want to discuss. As you know, there have been major acquisitions, investment in the video game industry worldwide by large organizations. So the question is, how does it affect the indies that are remaining independents, as well as the studios who are being acquired? So I'm going to move to Scott on this, because you have a panel coming on acquisition, I think. So go ahead, Scott.
Yes. Yeah, it'll be in 2 hours, actually. So, I find it actually very invigorating. I mean, we're fortunate. So we had previously been part of a company called Improbable. They're a tech startup based out of London in the UK. And then as things evolved over the last number of years, they wanted to do some different things on the technology front. We still were interested in developing, video games. And so over the course of last summer, some conversations started. And so now we've been spun out of Improbable, and a majority investor is Tencent. So, arguably the biggest games company in the world. And we're fortunate to have access to their resources. And I know that they and other companies are out there and aggressively investing either minority stakes or majority stakes or whole ownership of different studios. But I think that's actually really good for the industry. You'll always continue to have the indies and the entrepreneurial spirit and people that are going to want to go off and do their own. And there's different relationships that can happen then with these organizations. Some of it's ownership, some of it is just funding, and the access to capital in order to bring your creative vision to market. It's a super exciting time to be a part of the industry.
So Vincent, you're very, very successful in these studios. So any comment on how those acquisitions and investments are changing the landscape for you?
At Behavior, we do have investment, but external investment, but we do remain in full control of the company, so we remain independent. I think that remaining independent is incredibly important simply because it gives us access to the choice of partners that we want to work with. There's a lot of acquisitions out there that happen. For example, companies that get bought up by Microsoft, for example, then that cuts out a whole bunch of other partners that they could potentially be working with because now they're under the Microsoft umbrella. So it kind of restricts their choice. Other studios have seen also kind of a loss of creative control when they're taken over by other studios. But I think that's probably the biggest thing that's important when acquisitions happen. If the studios, those independent studios, are able to remain in control of their identity, in control of their values, I think that's what companies should strive for if they're being acquired.
So then, quickly, because I want to wrap up soon, but any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a normal contraction and expansion in the industry, right? Like I've been around long enough that, we go through phases where there's all of these acquisitions and things like that. And a lot of things happen as a result. Like us, we just celebrated our 15-year anniversary recently, and a big chunk of our work is co-dev. So a side effect for us that we're seeing from this is a massive increase in our business as just with a lot of these companies getting bought up, there's less development capacity out there for a lot of these publishers who are looking for co-development and things like that. So that's certainly been a major factor as we've seen for all of this going on. But what tends to happen when you come out of this flurry of acquisition that happens is people eventually leave their acquired companies and start founding new studios, and the cycle kind of begins anew, right? Like that's what happened last time there were these massive acquisitions. So I think we can look down the line and start seeing a lot of changes coming on the other side of this.
Okay, so I've got the 1 minute. Lucy, you need to wrap up. The important question at the end is, and I will start with Jason, why are you proud to be part of the Canadian industry?
I can't think of a more exciting industry to be a part of. I've got the best job in the world. I get to come to work every day and help people like this, grow their businesses by making sure that we have the best development environment in the world, right? And I don't even think of my job as work, and that's why I'm proud of it.
Scott.
Yeah, I mean, almost to my earlier comments, it's just an exciting opportunity to continue to grow. I mean, it's the largest form of entertainment in the world, and to be able to participate that, and as a finance and operations guy sitting in Edmonton, back when I was a young kid playing Madden football, I had the opportunity at EA to actually support the finance team and structure of the Orlando studio down in Florida that makes Madden football. To go from being a young kid who enjoyed just playing video games to actually participating in it from the business side and the opportunities that it's presented to me professionally. It's just an incredible opportunity for folks to get into an amazing industry.
Vincent?
Yeah, also talking back to when I was a kid, in my mind, games were made in Japan, they were made in the US, and that was it, right? So no chance I could work in games ever. So I never thought that Canada could become such a stronghold in video game development. It's amazing. And it's not just the major studios, right? We do have all of the major players here now in Canada, but it's also a ton of indie studios that are out there. It's just amazing the quantity that we're producing in Canada.
And Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd echo what my colleagues have said here today, right? I mean, look what we've done as a country over the past several years, right? How big and how powerful the industry has become here. I've been fortunate that I've worked almost all over the world, right? In different countries and seeing their different communities and things like that. And we really do have something special here in Canada, something I think that needs to be, and deserves to be protected and grown. And, I think we're extremely fortunate with the level of talent and the level of passionate individuals we have here. It's really a unique thing we've got going.
I agree. So on that, thank you, Vincent, Scott, Dan, Jason. Thank you, the audience, and XP.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Guys.